taking this deep breath, just letting it all go, knowing that there is only one life that is breathing through every motion of this turning world that I call God, I call Spirit, Buddha mind, Christ consciousness, and on and on. It rises in the blue heron that lurches forth from its rookery, wings unfolding like a forgotten psalm, and the glimmer of salmon as they muscle upstream through cold waters, answering that ancestral pool. And it emerges in those gray clouds that gather and drift, divine calligraphy scrawled across this wide autumn sky. Spirit is here, it is now. It is woven into that russet light, into that wood smoke, into those lengthening shadows. It is all that there is and all that ever will be. And I know that I am not apart from this. I am not separate from this divine turning. I am this holographic expression of all those God qualities in this physical form. Spirit pulses through my chest, and its intelligence moves through this spiritual community, alive within each heart that is gathered here today. Each one here is not a visitor to the sacred. They are sacred itself, remembering itself. And so it is from this place in consciousness that I speak my word for this community. I know that the words that are spoken here today are imbued with that divine intelligence, carrying that quiet power of truth, touching what needs to be awakened. And I affirm that the music and songs that are played here today are a reminder that each one's song demands to be sung, each voice demanding to be heard. And I know that the silent moments are holy ground, a gathering place where that infinite presence meets us with that language that is beneath all languages. I know that this service is guided, it is perfect, it is purposeful. And so I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this gathering community, like fallen leaves, each one unique, each one perfect. And I'm grateful for the law that always says yes, that always affirms what we give it, without judgment and reciprocating in kind. And so I release this word into that law, knowing that this prayer is answered, knowing that this word is fulfilled, and I simply say, and so it is. Please join me in 2 minutes of silence.
So this whole month we're working on the idea, the theme of wealth. And as I mentioned earlier, wealth is not material possessions, not stuff, but the sense of well-being. This is the original meaning of the word wealth. It comes from the Old English word wheel, and it's well-beingness. So we all know people who have lots of stuff, right? But they're not necessarily being well. Yes? So it's a sense of well-being. And our theme today is being accountable. And when that flashed up there that the talk was being accountable, I heard somebody right behind me, I believe it was you, saying, God, that sounds a lot like being responsible. A lot like it, yes, actually. So the Cambridge Dictionary defines accountable as someone who is accountable is completely responsible for what they do and must be able to give a satisfactory reason for it. Take a breath. Most of us were raised to believe that our lives are controlled by outer circumstances and other people, and we have to wait until the right moment, till they decide that it's the right moment, by the way. But like all great spiritual traditions at their core, we teach it is done unto us as we believe. As we believe. Not as that person out there or that circumstance out there believes, but as we believe, which places the responsibility for the overall flow and direction of our lives on us. Breathe. Now, this is what I call the good news, bad news of this teaching, right? Because the bad news is, oh, I can't blame my upbringing, that person over there, the government, my astrology, whatever outer circumstance for what I'm experiencing. But the good news is, if I'm responsible for it, guess what? I can change my thinking, I can change my beliefs, I can change my life. That's what we're about. So, our responsibility, our lives are based on our beliefs, not our whimsical thoughts, our beliefs. We all have passing thoughts, right? We've all wanted to go and punch somebody out. Maybe we all haven't. But I have felt that occasionally. I'll just confess, bless me, Father, I've sinned. For the Catholics in the audience, former Catholics in the audience, like myself. Our beliefs are the strands of our thoughts formed into a rope, if you will. We have an occasional thought, and if we run it for long enough, it starts to become more solid, it becomes more rope-like. Neuroscientists describe these as neural pathways, through which thought information is transmitted from one place to another within our bodies. And these neural pathways grow with usage, but they can change through a process that the brain neuroscientists call neuroplasticity. Say that 5 times real fast with me, neuroplasticity. Yes, there we go. It's interesting to note that in the Aramaic translation of the Bible, and even as early as the 5th century, the character that was translated as camel in a phrase that Jesus used was instead interpreted as rope. They said that the translation was a mistranslation. As in, it's easier for a rope to go through the eye of a needle rather than a camel to go through the eye of a needle, as most of us were taught. Now, how does a rope go through a needle's eye? You have to disassemble it into one strand, and pass it through, one at a time. So in other words, if we're applying that to our thoughts, we have to disassemble our beliefs and see the individual thoughts of which they're made. Because oftentimes we have this belief and we don't really know the origin of that belief until we take a step back and say, wait, where did I get that? Oh, look at that individual thought. It came from my childhood. It came from my parents. It came from my teachers, my siblings, whoever. See the individual thoughts, which involves taking an account of our thinking. Michael Beckwith used to say, or probably still does say, if you want to know what you're thinking, look at your life. If you want to know what you're believing, look at your life. Our lives are an account of our thinking and our beliefs over time. But there's a trap to this. See, if we go to an accountant that will look dispassionately at our accounts, right? They will just look at it and they will assess what's working and what's not. But when we look at our lives, we evaluate emotionally and rate or berate ourselves for the way things are going. And we'll do that based on our beliefs, conditionings, comparison to others, and our expectations and beliefs about what is possible. We won't expand out beyond what we think is possible. We won't look at our lives and say, there's a whole other dimension that's available to me that I don't even know about. Because we're locked into our current set of beliefs of this is what is possible. Are you with me? So we will usually either be hypercritical of ourselves or be comfortable with a level of living that's far below the infinite potential of life. And so we chose the theme for our prosperity campaign this year of Beyond Our Wildest Dreams. Are you willing to move beyond your wildest dreams? Are you willing to move into your being beyond your wildest dreams? A couple of you are. Okay, good. The rest of you are not so sure about this. It's a wonderful land. We chose that theme to support all of us in expanding beyond our comfort zones, our neural pathways of our beliefs about the kind of community we are and can be, and then by association, the kind of lives that we can live and we can have, and the kind of people we can be. Would you like to expand beyond who you already are? Not that there's anything wrong with who you already are, but there's more, yes? Okay? We limit ourselves based on our beliefs of what's possible and our not knowing how to move beyond. We get stuck because if I don't know how, well, I'm not going to go. Yet all greatness, and we are all embodiments of the infinite greatness, yes? Nudge your neighbor and say, you're an embodiment of the infinite greatness. You're an embodiment of the infinite greatness. And so all greatness lies beyond the borders and boundaries of our current beliefs and fears. Breathe that in. All our greatness, all of the possibility of who we can be lies beyond the borders and boundaries of who we already believe we are. Ernest Holmes says, in the realm of mind, that's capital M mind, in the realm of mind, there are no limitations except those which are self-imposed. The infinite doesn't have any limitations, right? The infinite has no limitations. We're the ones who limit its flow and its expression in, through, and as ourselves. Breathe. So our work is to find and release our self-imposed limitations, our variations of I'm not good enough. Our Gay Hendricks calls it the upper limit problem, that we have, here's a limit, that this is how high we believe we can go, and we will not go beyond that, and if we get above that, we'll readjust and bring ourselves back down to that. Instead of raising our thermostat, we will comply to the thermostat. Our belief that living lives of excellence, which means duplicating the nature of God, is too hard, too much work, and not really achievable. And besides, I'm too old and comfortable where I am. Make sure to have a little cheese with that wine. Forgetting that we are spiritual beings and thus eternal beings, having this short-term experience in this particular human body with more to come, which will be built upon the wisdom and experience gained in this body, in this particular experience on the planet, as is the one that we're living now, built upon whatever we learned before we came here. Okay? And that first of all, old is a relative term. I was with a group of people the other night, and one of them we were talking about the Oregon Ducks, because a couple of us are Duck fans. And he talked about, well, this is probably back before your time, but back in 71 and 72, there was this kind of school. And I said, how old do you think I am? And he said, well, not old enough to remember that. And he said, you're younger than I am, and I'm 72. And I said, I'm 2 years older than you are. And he was like, whoa. So old is a relative term. I've had people tell me, you don't look like you're 74, you don't act like you're 74. Which I take as a compliment, by the way. And who forms the idea of what 74 or whatever age looks like, feels like, and acts like? Who forms that idea? I do. Yeah. Our collective belief system, our collective consciousness has ideas about this is what it should look like. And ultimately, as Christy just said, I get to choose. But I may not have to do what they do. The second thing to understand is that as spiritual beings, we don't age. Spiritual beings don't age. And that wherever you think you are, your comfort zone is changing anyways, because life is expanding and growing. If I'm comfortable here in this little spot today, guess what's happening to that spot? The spot is moving on. And if you're not, you'll find yourself living in hell, which is to say separate from life, not some place, separate from life, and I don't mean the latest fads and fashions, but I mean from a life that is from life, capital L life, it is the animating principle of being. The animating principle of spirit. You'll find yourself outside of that because that nature of the divine is always expanding, always expressing more and being more of whatever it is. And if I'm not sitting there going, yeah, I want to be part of that, I'm going with that, and instead of going, I'm going to cling to this little thing that I got right here, it's going to move on. And it'll send some thunderclaps to wake us up. So we are constantly choosing either life or death through our thoughts and actions. And when you reach the end of the journey of this particular existence and you're doing your own accounting of life, do you want it to be full of, I coulda, I shoulda, I wish I had, if only I had? Or do you want it to be, wow, what a ride! It didn't always work out the way I hoped for, but I lived flat out, doing my best, and I have no regrets. Which one do you choose? That's the second one, I hope so. See, life, our lives, follows our clear and committed intentions. I'll say it again. Our lives follow our clear and committed intentions. The how often won't reveal itself until we're already on the path. A whole lot of us don't go forward because we don't know what's going to lie next and how I might deal with it. But the how doesn't show up until we're already on the path. If we wait, as the song said, for the how to show up first, so we can analyze it and then get all our ducks in a row, life will pass us by while we're trying to herd ducks. You ever try to herd ducks? Or sheep, or cats, or as a friend of mine said, gerbils, from a recent experience they had. So we're being called to live now out beyond our wildest dreams. And I invite you to take that invitation and claim it as yours. So this week, 2 spiritual practices. Number 1, take a clear, honest accounting of your life. No blame, shame, or guilt. Okay? This is not the time to beat yourself up. Just look. Hold it up to the mirror of your wildest dreams, of what you would really love your life to look like. And notice the relationship to those dreams. And then notice if your mind chatters around and says, yeah, but it's too late for that dream. And let that go. Again, we're infinite beings, we're eternal beings. There's no such thing as too late. It may take a different form than the way that you thought it would be. But you can go for what's the essence of that dream that I really want to have. And go for that essence. So that's the first practice. The second one is pick one of those wildest dreams, the deep, soul-fulfilling kind, the kind your heart and your whole being is called to, and set an intention and make a commitment to move in the direction of that dream. And then open to the support of Spirit within you, admitting that you have no bloody idea how to get there, because if you did, you'd already be there, right? No bloody idea how to get there, but the infinite presence, the infinite mind within does. If I'm just willing to say, going there, years. Now, I love that. To me, that's kind of an oxymoron, right? Have you ever been to Scotland? There are no mountains in Scotland. But a group of Scottish mountaineers who love to climb in the Himalayas borders, and so they had to go to Nepal and figure out routes up the mountains from Nepal. And so these 4 guys decided they were going to take a trip and go to Nepal and figure out how to do that. They had no idea of exactly what they were going to do. They just finally decided, we're going to go there, we're going to arrive there and see what happens. They get there, and they connect with the former British ambassador. These guys are from England. Did I mention that? Scotland. They met up with the former ambassador to Tibet, who had been kicked out because they'd closed the borders and was now living in Nepal, who was also a mountain climber. That's part of why he took the post. And he introduced them to a Sherpa, one of the native peoples there, who helped him out with climbing mountains. And he was well known. He had connections all over the place. And they immediately said, wow, you can take charge of this expedition. And he said, yes. While they were there, a couple of Australian mountain climbers found out they were there, who were in the area, found out they were there, connected with them. One of them was a guy named Ed Hillary, later known as Sir Edmund Hillary, who was the first man to climb, along with his Sherpa Tenzing Norgay, was the first person to climb Mount Everest. Right? All these connections. Now, when they left Scotland on this steamer, they had no idea all this was going to happen. And by the way, Tenzing Norgay, who was the Sherpa, was a friend of the Sherpa of the British ambassador, but he had never done mountain climbing before. And it was the British ambassador's Sherpa who taught him about mountain climbing so that he could then become an assistant to Ed Hillary, or Sir Edmund, and become practically the most famous Sherpa. If you're into mountain climbing circles, he's like a legend for that. He's guided so many people up that. So all of that unfolds. So W.H. Murray, as he's well known, Bill Murray, as he was known to his friends, not the actor, wrote a book called The Scottish Himalayan Expedition, which is a title I just love. And he said, but when I said, he said that they hadn't really done much. They didn't really know what to do. They were talking about it, it was a nice idea, but they didn't know what to do. He says, but when I said that nothing had been done, I erred in one important matter. We had definitely committed ourselves and were halfway out of our ruts of thinking. We had put down our passage money, booked a sailing to Bombay. They took a definite step. They put money on it, yes? They put skin in the game. He goes on to say, this may sound too simple, but is great in consequence. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then Providence, Spirit, moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets, whatever you do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And so that's what I'm calling us to do as we become accountable, is to become accountable to our dreams, to that which it calls for us, and to commit to taking a step, not knowing where that step is going to lead. Are you willing to play with that? Great. We have an affirmation. Boy, that was... Let's try that again. Are you willing to commit to that? Yes. Thank you. Otherwise, you can wait and wait, like the song said, and just wait. So we have an affirmation. Join me on this. I set the sail of my intentions towards the new lands of my wildest dreams. Say it once again. I set the sail of my intentions towards the new lands of my wildest dreams. And so it is. So we have a wild dream of creating some financial support for this center, of moving us into the next level of how good we can be and how wonderful we can be. And so this whole month we're doing what we call a prosperity campaign. We're asking people to pledge their support for the 2026 year to allow us to move forward, to expand, to become more. And so we've asked Denny Kautzman to, if you've been here the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of people share why they support this. And we've asked Denny to talk about why he supports it. Denny, you should know, is the head of our finance committee and our leader of that. So, Denny.
Thank you. I'm sure that most of you know me. I see some new faces in here, and so I don't know you yet, but I hope to get to know you. Reverend David pretty much took what I was going to say today and put it into his talk. And so, you know, a lot of that has to do with intention. And we talk about the accountability. That also has to do with intention and being responsible and taking ownership of that. And that has to do with the integrity of one's word, one's actions, and so forth. So honestly, we would not be here, Carol and I wouldn't be in this community were it not for the fact that we set an intention to move to this place. Not specifically Olympia at the time, but we opened up to wanting to be in the Pacific Northwest. And this is where it led us. And quite honestly, you know, we have intention, and that belief is, that unfolds. We looked at our past, the history of our lives, and we saw that everything that we believed was what we were experiencing. So we set our goals to come here, and we manifested that. It led us to this place, and by that I mean that sometimes when one sets an intention and we don't know how that's going to go, and we open up to the possibilities and we say, oh, well, this is a possibility, and start to pursue that, there's a few roadblocks that show up. And sometimes it's just that maybe that isn't the correct path to be on. And so that happened with us. And we looked at different options that showed up during that time, and here we are today. Being in this community was a part of that. And I can tell you, quite honestly, we had, especially me, had no intention to be part of a spiritual community at the time. That was not in the cards that I had laid out. And so these things happen, and they happen for reasons, and they happen because we set our intention on it. And the one thing that became very clear to me was that competing intentions oftentimes will sabotage what it is that we really want to do. So it's being mindful of those things that show up, those old beliefs, those old habits that we think we're making decisions and it really isn't our decision. It's something that came before when we were growing up and we came to understand as this is what happens. I would venture to say that each of you can find a time in your lives where you have said, oh, I better not do this, this is going to happen, and guess what happens? It does, right? You know, I had a time when I was cutting off a heater hose on an engine of a vehicle, and I had the knife cutting this hose off, which was stuck, and I was holding the hose on the wrong side, pulling the knife toward it, and I'm going, oh, I better not do this, and just as I said that, bam, stabbed myself with the knife. And, you know, it's a physical example of it, but I'm sure that we each have experienced those things. So here's where I'm at right now with this. I was in a place where I was getting frustrated and feeling like I was getting overwhelmed because I committed to all of these different things that I was doing. And I had to step back from that and think about why I was frustrated. Well, I'm frustrated because I have to do all these things. Well, why do I have to do them? Well, because I committed to them. Well, why did I commit to them? Well, I committed to them because they're important to me. Well, why are they important to me? Well, because they make a difference in people's lives, and that's where I'm at. So turning that around, I said, I get to do these things that are important to me. So having that sort of an approach toward this community, if this community is important to you, we get to support it. We get to do the things that are important to this community. And that's where I would ask each of us, when setting our own beliefs, to come really clear about what it is that is important to you. And then from there, stand firm in your conviction to know what it is that you need to do, that you want to do as a result of that. Thank you. Oh, by the way, if you want to know Yes, Craig wasn't here to do this, so we're going to show you where we're at right now. We don't have an awful lot of pledges in yet, but the goal for 2026 is 180,000. And as of today's date, and actually Craig tried to get a hold of me to give me an update, but this was a few days ago, we are at 44,876, which is just about 25%.
Thank you.